Alger Hiss was born in 1904 to a large family. He lived a very happy childhood, only darkened by his father committing suicide when Hiss was 2. After his father's death, his Aunt Lila helped his mother care for him and his 4 siblings. Hiss majored in Romance languages and history at Johns Hopkins University. He later went on to study at Harvard Law School. His brother, Donald, also attended college there. During his college years, Hiss served in the Reserve Officers Training Corps. His favorite professor and good friend at Harvard, Felix Frankfurter, recommended to Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes that he make Hiss his private secretary. Of his time as Holmes' secretary, Hiss said, "No other honor or piece of good fortune has been such a source of delight for me as was that enchanted year I spent with Holmes beginning in October 1929, and no other relationship has had a deeper or more lasting influence. No young lawyer who spent a year with this model of the upright man could fail to wish to emulate him in conduct and character. They developed a close friendship, and Hiss felt like he was a part of the family." Hiss lived in New York City and saw daily the growing breadlines, shanty towns, and beggars. He became a leading member of Roosevelt's New Deal, both at the advice of Frankfurter and because of his desire to help. He became the Assistant General Counsel in the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, where he worked to raise the farm prices by reducing the production of crops. It was an experience that tested his morals and altered his views greatly. During World War II, he worked in the State Department as the assistant to the advisor on political relations, a position one of his former Harvard professors had previously filled. He was closely involved in formulating the U.S.'s response to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. He was asked to attend the Yalta Conference, at which point he was appointed director of the Office of Special Political Affairs. Through his position, he was involved in the founding of the United Nations and was named the principal advisor of the U.S. representatives. There is no doubt that Hiss was a very successful person. He had already achieved great things and seemed destined for greater. To his surprise, he began to hear that several Republican Congress members were accusing him of being a communist. He learned later that these assertions were based solely on a man named Whittaker Chambers' statements to the FBI. Chambers was a former communist who had become an outspoken opponent to the party. Thinking the courts would be unsusceptible to the Red Scare, which he considered small-minded, Hiss was even more surprised when the accusation turned into a trial. At first he was confident that he would be found innocent, but he slowly began to realize that the jury had been tampered with. Richard Nixon, in an attempt to further his own career through getting Hiss convicted, was issuing public statements against him. "I couldn't believe that such a blatant miscarriage of justice was possible," he said of the trials. "Prejudices, bias, and lies had vanquished those of us who had taken the rule of law so seriously." The trials frustrated Hiss and made him feel helpless. "As I sat there, I recognized to what extent a jury trial is really a contest between 2 opposing lawyers," he said. "Only they are active throughout the entire procedure. As a witness, even as the defendant, I felt at times like a pawn in a game played by others. Often I felt like a spectator rather than a participant in my own trial." The public's involvement in the trial added extra stress. Press and curious spectators bombarded Hiss and his wife as they were walking to and from the courtroom each day, and the trial was being talked about daily in the New York newspapers and all across the nation. Despite his confidence, Hiss was found guilty and served 44 months in prison, almost 4 years. However, because of how publicized the trial was, it had far greater consequences. It aided in the election of Richard Nixon to office and led to ongoing attacks on the New Deal, as well as Roosevelt's foreign policies. After his release, Hiss took a job as a salesman. He continued to insist that he was innocent, and over the years, evidence that supported his claim began to surface. Included in this evidence were several thousand pages of FBI documents that were released to Hiss. Information in these documents suggested that the FBI hid evidence during the trial that would have helped to prove his innocence. Based off of this, he filed a petition asking that the verdict be revoked, but it was denied. Years later, however, he achieved a court victory when he was unanimously readmitted to the Bar of Massachusetts. The suspicion surrounding Alger Hiss after their trials was never completely erased. Despite this, however, Alger Hiss lived an extremely prosperous life. He achieved a range of things during his lifetime and as someone who will be remembered for the remarkable work he has done.